Well, economic pain continues undeniably, with Trump's approval predictably hitting the skids. Multiple polls place his job approval in the mid-30s, the lowest of his second term, with disapproval reaching historic highs on the economy and health care.
Well, tonight, President Trump's war in Iran and rising costs fueled by it are impacting how Americans feel about the economy and his presidency. Trump's approval now at the lowest level of his second term. Only 27% of Americans approve of how he is handling inflation, and 76% now say they're concerned about their personal finances. CBS's Olivia Rinaldi is at the White House with more on our poll and the latest in politics. Olivia, good evening.
Good evening, Jerika. That new poll also found that 69% of Americans say they don't have a clear understanding of the situation in the Strait of Hormuz, as the war is adding to economic concerns here at home.
President Trump visited his Virginia golf club shortly after issuing a new warning to Tehran. The administration's focus on Iran has Americans feeling the pinch. In new CBS News polling, almost 60% of Americans described gas prices in May as a financial hardship. Last week, the president dismissed affordability concerns.
I don't think about Americans' financial situation. I think about one thing. We cannot let Iran have a nuclear weapon.
The president doubled down in an interview with Fox in Beijing.
That's right. That's a perfect statement. I'd make it again. When you tell somebody you're going to have to pay a little more, not that much more, a little more for gasoline for a very short period of time, because we want to stop the threat of being blown to pieces by a lunatic, everybody says that's fine.
President Trump ran on an economic revival, yet nearly two-thirds of the country say his policies are making the economy worse in the short term.
And we had Amazon Executive Chair Jeff Bezos on Wednesday accusing politicians of villainizing the ultra-wealthy and using tax policy as a political wedge issue to distract from bigger challenges facing the country.
These people sometimes say that I don't pay taxes. That's not true. I pay billions of dollars in taxes, and it's a perfect. Again, if people want me to pay more billions, right, then let's have that debate. But don't pretend, that's going to solve the problem. You could double the taxes I pay, and it's not going to help that teacher in Queens. I promise you.
New York Mayor Zoran Mamdani later responded to Bezos' assessment, quote, "I know a few teachers in Queens who would beg to differ," he wrote on social media. Bezos said that while income inequality is a legitimate concern, raising taxes on the rich is not one of the ways to remedy it.
I think what's going on is that it's kind of a tale of two economies. So you have a bunch of people in this country who are doing really well, but you also have a bunch of people in this country who are struggling to pay rent, groceries. And so what's happening here is politicians are using the kind of age-old technique. So there's this tale of two economies, and they're using this age-old technique of, picking a villain and pointing fingers. But the problem is that doesn't solve anything. So people talk about, making the tax system more progressive. How about we start by having the nurse in Queens not pay taxes? Why is somebody at all? Why is a nurse in Queens who makes $75,000 a year paying more than $1,000 a month in taxes?
It was unclear precisely which taxes Bezos was referring to, according to NBC News. Of course, despite what this gazillionaire says, taxing the rich is broadly popular. An April poll conducted by Fox News, of all things, found that what bothers people most about federal income taxes is the wealthy are not paying enough. In March, the state of Washington approved a millionaire's tax. Other states have zeroed in on additional taxes for millionaires and billionaires, too. Massachusetts, Maryland, and Maine have all passed dedicated high-income taxes in recent years. In January, the governor of Rhode Island endorsed the idea of a millionaire's tax. And lawmakers in Connecticut, Illinois, Colorado, California have also proposed similar ideas, according to Bloomberg. But on the federal level, tax hikes are unlikely as long as Republicans control the House, Senate, and the White House. Back on the ground, there's a phrase you hear a lot from politicians and economists whenever working people start talking about how hard things feel right now. The fundamentals are strong. But more and more Americans are looking around at grocery prices, gas prices, rent, medical bills, debt, and job insecurity, and asking a pretty simple question. Strong for fucking who? A new CBS poll found that Americans have reported growing levels of stress and uncertainty about the economy, with declining feelings of financial security and growing frustration over the cost of living. Large numbers of people say gas prices are weighing on them. Many feel economic opportunities are getting worse compared to previous generations, and anxiety over AI replacing jobs continues to rise. And honestly, this disconnect between official narratives and lived experience is becoming one of the defining political tensions of this era. Workers are told inflation is cooling, while they're still paying dramatically more for necessities than they were just a few years ago. They're told unemployment is low, while many are juggling multiple jobs, gig work, or unstable schedules just to stay afloat. They're told the economy is booming, while they increasingly feel locked out of homeownership, retirement security, or even the remote possibility of getting ahead. Now add another warning on top of that. Financial markets themselves are starting to flash anxiety signals. CNN and multiple financial outlets are reporting growing alarm in the bond market, as investors increasingly fear that inflation is not going away anytime soon. Treasury yields have surged to their highest levels since before the 2008 financial crisis, with the 30-year Treasury briefly topping 5.2%. Analysts point to rising energy prices, geopolitical instability, and fears that the Federal Reserve may keep interest rates elevated even longer. And here's why that matters for ordinary people. When bond yields rise, borrowing becomes more expensive across the entire economy. Mortgage rates go up, car loans go up, credit card interest rises, businesses cut hiring, local governments face higher borrowing costs. The bond market might sound abstract, but workers feel it materially in monthly payments and shrinking economic opportunity. At the same time, economic forecasters cited by CNBC continue warning inflation could climb higher towards 6% in the second quarter, driven largely by rising energy costs and broader instability tied to conflict in the Middle East. Reuters reports economists increasingly expect the Federal Reserve to keep rates higher for longer as inflation pressures persist. And here's the thing people understand intuitively, even if cable news panels don't. When energy prices spike, everything else follows. Transportation costs go up, food prices go up, utilities go up, manufacturing costs go up. It becomes a tax on daily life for ordinary people. That's why the growing conflict with Iran matters economically even to workers thousands of miles away from the Middle East. Multiple reports now point to rising oil prices tied to instability around the Strait of Hormuz, one of the world's most critical shipping routes. Oil has climbed sharply again, and gas prices are already surging. Meanwhile, many mainstream financial outlets have shifted into full recession-proof-your-life mode. CNN recently published advice on how Americans should prepare for a possible downturn, build emergency savings, reduce debt, update resumes, strengthen professional networks, and prepare for layoffs. Other financial advisors are offering similar guidance. And think about what that says politically. We live in the wealthiest society in human history, yet millions of people are being told to prepare individually for economic disaster because the system itself offers so little security. Workers are expected to recession-proof themselves, while corporations continue stock buybacks. Wall Street speculates on inflation, and defense contractors and oil companies cash in during the global instability. And notice how this always works. Working people are told there's never enough money for universal health care, affordable child care, public housing, or stronger labor protections. But somehow there's always enough money for military escalation, corporate subsidies, and trade wars that raise prices for everyone else. Because in this system, workers absorb the shock. Corporations pass costs along. Investors speculate. Defense contractors cash in. Oil companies post record profits. And ordinary people are left standing in the grocery aisle wondering why every trip costs more than the last one. That's why so many Americans increasingly reject the idea that the economy is healthy simply because stock indexes are high or GDP numbers look respectable on paper. Economic reality is experienced materially. It's experienced at the gas pump, in the rent payment, in the hospital bill, and whether you can afford a week off work without financial disaster. And when poll after poll shows rising pessimism, rising stress, and declining faith in the future, maybe the problem isn't that workers are misunderstanding the economy. Maybe they understand it perfectly well. Of course, there's another layer to all of this that deserves attention. Because when economic pressure keeps building while political institutions appear either indifferent or openly captured by wealthy interests, anger doesn't just disappear, it accumulates. A recent opinion piece in The Hill argued that the political class is dangerously underestimating the level of rage building among working people across the country. And honestly, whether you agree with every part of that argument or not, you can see the underlying reality everywhere. Deep exhaustion, alienation, and a growing sense that nobody in power is listening. Because people can tolerate hardship when they believe sacrifice is temporary or shared fairly. What they cannot tolerate indefinitely is watching billionaires accumulate unimaginable wealth while they themselves fall further behind despite working harder than ever. That's the contradiction sitting at the center of this moment. Workers are told inflation is unavoidable, austerity is necessary, layoffs are efficient, and war spending is patriotic. But at the exact same time, corporate profits remain enormous, executive compensation keeps exploding, and financial markets continue rewarding the very institutions driving insecurity in the first place. And history shows that when democratic institutions stop offering meaningful avenues for economic relief, people begin searching for other ways to express anger. Sometimes constructive, through labor organizing and mass movements, and sometimes destructive, through social unrest and political extremism. You can already see flashes of that frustration online. Discussions across working-class forums increasingly frame this current economy not as a temporary downturn, but as a system fundamentally organized against ordinary people. Then, as you may have seen, you have this.
And we have new developments this morning in this massive warehouse fire that started yesterday in Ontario. It's a story Today in LA has been on top of since it started. And now new video has surfaced, apparently posted by the man accused of arson. NBC4's Lauren Coronado has been on this since the fire started. So, Lauren, the video is disturbing with what we see, but also what we hear.
Lynette, absolutely. The video, it's really shocking. You'll see it in just a little bit, but you talk about this massive warehouse fire, right? That happened Tuesday overnight. Well, right now, there are still items inside of the building on fire. You can see those active flames. If you live in the area, you'll see a lot of smoke still hovering right over the warehouse. Now, let's get to that video. Ontario police say they're using as part of the investigation.
You know, if you're not going to pay us enough to live or afford to live, at least pay us enough not to do this. There goes your inventory.
Shocking video posted to social media showing someone lighting pallets and pallets of paper products. We're talking toilet paper, wipes, paper towels on fire within the Kimberly-Clark warehouse here in Ontario overnight Tuesday. Our team spoke with a worker who says he was with the man in the video just about 10 minutes right before that fire started.
Look, I just met him that night. From talking to him with the 2 hours I was working with him, I didn't see this coming at all. Because, if he had the, ability to snap that, do all that stuff, this makes me think, what else he could have done.
A scary thought. Ontario police officers say 29-year-old Shamil Abdul Karim, a third-party employee, is facing several arson-related felony charges and is currently being held without bail. Back out here live as you continue to see this building smoldering. It is possible that the accused arsonist could be in court for his first court appearance today, within the next few hours, in fact. Of course, we're going to work to confirm that with the DA's office, and I'll bring you another update closer to 6:55. Reporting live in Ontario, I'm Lauren Coronado for Today in LA.
As the piece explains, not since Luigi Mangione allegedly shot an insurance company executive in New York City has there been such a crystallizing moment for the expression of the growing hopelessness and anger felt by people at the bottom of the economic ladder. Wealth disparities, the lack of upward mobility, the affordability crisis, and the impact of AI are all contributing to these feelings. While the lionizing of Mangione has subsidized since 2024, the frustration that led him to murder the head of United Healthcare has not. Recall the message he painted on the bullets he used: delay, deny, depose. Those words channeled the feelings of millions of Americans who have been mistreated by insurance companies. What the Los Angeles arsonist said, and the fact that he posted a video of what he did, suggests that he too saw himself in a role similar to Mangione's. The LA arson should be a wake-up call to political leaders that they urgently need to address the growing despair felt by many Americans. Some, like New York City Mayor Zoran Mamdani, seem to have gotten the message. But at the national level, unfortunately, all signs are pointing in the opposite direction. So that doesn't mean collapse is inevitable, but it does mean the political establishment should stop treating rising pessimism as some kind of messaging problem. This isn't just about consumer confidence. It's about millions of people increasingly believing the social contract itself has been broken. And if wages stagnate while prices spike again this summer, driven by tariffs, energy shocks, and geopolitical conflict, that anger is only going to deepen. Because people can survive hardship. What they struggle to survive is humiliation, working constantly while feeling disposable, indebted, and ignored. Unions, worker organizations, tenant groups, and collective action are some of the only remaining democratic mechanisms ordinary people have to exert pressure before despair mutates into something darker. The alternative is a society where frustration keeps festering with no organized outlet except resentment, scapegoating, and social fragmentation. So when pollsters report rising stress and economists warn of renewed inflation, the story isn't just economic, it's political and social. And increasingly, it's about legitimacy itself, whether working people still believe this system can deliver a dignified life in exchange for their labor. Meanwhile, imagine graduating into these wretched economic conditions. An Al Jazeera report describes a bleak employment landscape facing recent U.S. college graduates as economic instability, AI, tariffs, war, and government funding cuts combine to shrink opportunities for entry-level workers. The article explains that many graduates are leaving school only to encounter a precarious job market marked by hiring freezes, layoffs, and intensified competition for stable work. Industries that once aggressively recruited new graduates, particularly tech, media, and government-funded sectors, have slowed hiring dramatically as employers respond cautiously to economic uncertainty and rising costs. The report highlights how AI has become both a source of anxiety and a practical barrier for new entrants into the workforce. Companies are increasingly automating junior-level tasks, while also expecting applicants to already possess advanced technical and AI-related skills. As one graduate quoted in the article describes, students were promised that college would provide stability, only to discover there are fewer opportunities than we expected. Many young workers are now competing against experienced applicants for positions once reserved for recent graduates, while automated hiring systems and mass online applications make the process feel impersonal and discouraging. The article also notes that broader economic pressures are worsening the crisis. Tariffs, inflation concerns, geopolitical conflicts, and cuts to public sector funding have made employers reluctant to expand payrolls. Some graduates interviewed expressed fears they may have to postpone milestones such as moving out, repaying loans, or beginning careers in their chosen fields. Analysts cited in the report describe a labor market that appears stable statistically, but feels stagnant for young workers trying to gain a foothold.